Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call to order this special meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. We have regrets from Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Robinson, and as you can see, the rest of us are all in our places with bright, shiny faces. And we have a number of delegations tonight as we get ready to consider the matter of the community center, the long-awaited and long-wanted community center for the southeast part of Oakville. I'd like to welcome the delegations. I have a request here from Mr. Laughlin. I hope I'm not saying it wrong, but Mr. Laughlin wishes to delegate tonight, Council, and missed the deadline. And I would ask for a motion and a second to waive the procedure bylaw to permit Mr. Laughlin to join the delegation list. Councillor Lischina and Councillor Hutchins, all in favor? That's carried. Mr. Laughlin, you'll be on the list as well. Is Mr. Laughlin here? Oh, good. There he is. All right. Laughlin, I think it is, correct, to correct myself. So there you go. The first delegation that we're going to hear from is Mr. Todd McClure. And Mr. McClure, you're welcome to come to the central podium here. And if you speak directly into the mic, the folks at home watching will be able to hear you as well as the rest of us. Is Mr. McClure here? Perhaps he's not here. Very quiet if he is. Then the next one we'll hear from is Mr. Brian Levitt. Mr. Levitt, you're welcome now. Council looks forward to your information, and the same advice about speaking toward the microphone if you want people to hear you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Originally I'd asked to be able to speak tonight before the master plan came out and was going to do all sorts of potential research before speaking, and the master plan came out, and I've kind of shifted what I'll be talking about. Mostly, and I dashed some notes down here, mostly I'm coming tonight to express appreciation. So I'm going to just thumb through a few of the notes that I have here. So looking over the master plan, chatting with a number of my neighbors, it's pretty clear, first of all, that I won't need 10 minutes, just so you know that. I have been coming to council and community meetings regarding the hospital issues for about 5 years now. Some of you may recognize me over that time. I live across the hospital lands on Allen Street, and as some of you already know, I've been following this process with considerable interest. I have learned a lot about local politics, and that's been very interesting for me, and primarily that we actually have representatives who listen to us, and I really appreciate that. So a little while back we were given assurances that there would be no loud demolition on weekends. It was one of the meetings I attended a little while back. I also wanted to express appreciation for that. All of my immediate neighbors, thank you. None of us have cottages as far as I know, so on the weekends we tend to our gardens and relax in our backyards, and not having demolition on the weekends, at least loud demolition noise, is really greatly appreciated, so thank you for that. Regarding the master plan itself, it's obvious that a great deal of thought and care was put into it. The principles are sound. It was interesting actually following along with that in the last meeting. And the recommendations flow logically from the principles. So as I read through the report, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Another thing I wanted to briefly address is there's been a lot of talk over time, and I think this is probably the case in general in town halls, about potential for NIMBYism, not in my backyard. I think it's important to address because this project already is in our backyards. So it's not a matter of not in our backyards, it's there. And so you hear a bunch of us coming to talk to you because living in the neighborhood, we have a good sense of how things might impact the surrounding neighborhood and beyond. Because it's in our backyard, I think we're well suited to give you some input about that, even if now and then We may be clumsy about it or passionate or what have you. We're giving input because of our knowledge of the neighborhood. So it is in our backyard, and we care about things going smoothly. As I read the master plan, it reflects about approximately 5 years of very open and active public consultation, which I've also really appreciated how transparent and how many opportunities we've had to actually consult about this. And it reflects the refinements over that time. We appreciate how thorough those consultations have been, and we also appreciate the transparency, as I say. The report reflects that you have heard us about density. That's one of the main things that came through. The report reflects that you've heard the desire for parkland and protecting the chimney swifts. The report reflects that you've heard us about concerns with cut-through traffic. That came through very clearly in the report as well. And the report reflects that you've heard the importance of reflecting the surrounding neighborhood. And the report reflects that you have heard us regarding the differences in utilization and access on the surrounding streets. For example, it makes sense for the community center to be located on Reynolds Street, where it's accessible, where it's visible. We have a bus route directly leads out to Trafalgar and to the highway. So we appreciate that as well. There are a few items that remain a bit vague at this point, and I think that it was written as such, so I'm not coming here to take fault with that. Most notably, the use of the high school and the development of senior housing. I appreciate that you will likely be holding further consultations regarding these. That's what I imagine when I read it, and I look forward to being a part of that as always. I imagine that you will be exercising the same thoughtfulness in future considerations and consultations in the context of understanding the surrounding neighborhood and the neighborhood that we all call home. And the plan as it stands and your actions over the last many years suggest that to me. So again, I do appreciate that. The plan also suggests that you really listen to us. That's the main thing that I take from the plan as I saw it. So again, on behalf of my household and our immediate neighbors, I want to once again thank you and the town planners for the master plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levitt. Are there questions for Mr. Levitt? Councillor Giddings.
Thanks again for coming out, Doctor. Just want to see if you're going to be sticking around for the rest of the evening, because you'll hear from staff 3 separate presentations talking about future discussions and timing of those on some of those areas that I believe you're talking about. So if you stay tuned, you'll hear more about that.
I look forward to that.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
The next delegation that we'll hear from, well, maybe I'll just call, there's a couple of people have entered since we started, so I'll just check and see if Todd McClure is here. Still not here. Okay, then we're going to move to David Dinowell. Mr. Dinowell, if I've said your name correctly, congratulate me, and if I said it wrong, correct me. In any event, council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Most people do get that wrong, so well done. Members of the council, thank you all for taking the time to hear the concerns of mine, which I share with many of the residents along Allen Street. Excuse me. My name is David Dinowell. I live at 297 Allen. I've lived in Oakville for 15 years, including 8 at 297 Allen. I'm here representing 14 of 16 of my neighbors who live on the east side of Allen, south of, or between Galt and the old Brantwood School, several of whom on short notice were able to make it in attendance tonight. And if I may, I have some slides up, if I can put them up, please.
We can get technical assistance. Look, the overhead camera's on. Can you see the target? Just put them there in the square.
Yes.
And they'll zoom in, if that's the kind of slides you mean.
Yes. So these are the list of the people that I was able to get in contact with yesterday regarding this proposal. In each of the 3 options that the Planning Department presented to Council on May 2nd, The area south of the parking garage abutting Allen Street contained detached dwellings, which I have here. As this was the option number 1, with detached dwellings there. Option number 2, again, with detached dwellings there. And lastly, the third option, again, with detached dwellings there. So much to my surprise when the materials that were distributed for this meeting on Friday came out, I finally saw them on Sunday as I was away for the weekend. The area had changed from single family, as was presented, to an undefined seniors-oriented housing. And as I mentioned, the parameters of this weren't defined. There were some vague presumptions, but they weren't defined in the materials. And this is as everyone knows, this was the piece that came in with that block there. This is in the report. I ended up last night managing to contact 14 of the 16 neighbors along my street before I ran out of daylight. And several of those attended the June 1st session, and I believe 4 or 5 were able to make it here tonight. Many of the neighbors expressed that they felt the nature of these changes were, and the timing of when they were made were not done in good faith. That was their feeling to me. They expressed considerable anger towards me that the changes were made like this. And one thing I can say is we were all unanimous in our concern over the proposal that was put forth regarding the area to the south of the parking garage and the vagueness surrounding it. So we request that Council consider 3 changes to the report as tabled. Number 1, that the area abutting Allen to the south, which I've tried as best as I can to shade to what had been provided before, be changed to reflect detached dwellings on that piece of the property, which is consistent again with the 3 recommendations that everyone in the neighborhood saw and everyone had a chance to comment on in the public process. It is also consistent with the rest of the treatment along Allen Street, along McDonald and Reynolds. And it gives us the same regard of livability that is proposed up here north of the parking garage to south of the parking garage. Second, the density and the built form of the remainder of the site that's classified as seniors-oriented housing. There was strong belief that this should be identified up front as part of the master plan itself and not defined at a later date. As you all know, there's been considerable work put into this plan to get us to this point, and it seems like we're stopping a step short of resolving the whole issue. And third and lastly, that it be explicit in the master plan that the official plan is respected with regards to compatibility of use along Allen Street and transition, if there are higher density forms of housing in there, that the transition guidelines are also respected on that piece of property. Again, these concepts were applied quite well, I believe, to the area up here where medium density residential was put on the inside and not impacting what already exists in the neighborhood. And for the area south of the garage, we do believe that this should be crystallized as the rest of the plan is. Again, we're not asking for special consideration. We're just asking for what has been afforded to other homeowners in the area. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you for your information. Are there questions for the delegation? Councillor Elgar.
Thank you for coming. So which options do you want? 1, 2, or 3? Is that what you're asking for?
I was partial to, when I asked my neighbors, there was a mix between the options, but the one piece that was consistent was the 5 detached lots that fronted onto Allen Street be consistent. There is considerable nervousness surrounding what will happen next if this isn't defined. From what I had heard, and again, very unscientific, options 1 and 2 were the preferred amongst those on Allen Street. But the discussions that I had with my neighbors centered around the uncertainty that was provided by having a plan that we all felt wasn't complete.
Understand here. So you don't like where the senior-orientated housing is? That's what I read, kind of what you're saying? You want detached houses where for half of the seniors-oriented housing?
Yes. Yes, that was, as was presented in all 3 plans, not only consensus, it was unanimous that all of the neighbors along Allen Street did not have a problem with that part of the plan in version 1, 2, or 3.
Okay, so version 1, 2, or 3, everybody was good. It's just now that the seniors-oriented housing has come into the mix?
Yeah, with regard to that, the issue around seniors-oriented housing was more of, it was very vague. It was referred to as lower rise, which I don't think I've ever seen defined anywhere. It was an issue over uncertainty, an issue over density. If you were to take this to one of the large senior housing providers, their sweet spot right now is 150 to 200 units, which equates to 120,000 to 200,000 square feet of density. That's, if a Rivera wanted to build a community home here, that's what they'd be looking for. So I know that likely isn't the intent of council, but these are the nerves that I was hearing from the area residents.
So if we find out that there's a height restriction on the number of levels, would that help?
If the 2 issues that came up more than any other were compatibility amongst both sides of the street. There are single-family homes on one side, a strong belief, as was done with the rest of the plan here, that there should be single-family homes on the other side. If it scaled up from there, respecting transitional guidelines that are in the official plan, I don't think people would have a problem with that.
Now, the open space, I imagine everybody's okay with that.
No. There were some nerves around the open space, given that it was referred to as open space or parking in prior versions. That my understanding is that open space can't be developed in any manner because of easements with the fire and utilities running through it. So there was some concern that they would try and turn that into parking at a later date, but my personal view on that is, given the parking facilities with the garage, if this part of the plan is designed properly, there's ample parking, ample accessible parking for those that have trouble walking from the 4th floor of a parking garage, if designed properly. So.
Okay. Well, I thank you. Thanks very much for your input.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We will next hear from Mr. Laughlin. Welcome,
First,
sir.
I'd like to thank Council for their indulgence of my tardiness in getting a request in. My name is Bob Laughlin. I'm speaking on behalf of the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association. I expected to be speaking after Dave Mallon and Janet Teal. OLA completely supports the position that Dave Mallon will be presenting shortly. And we do agree that it is the position of all 4 Residents Association in Ward 3. I just have, or we as ORA, just have one additional request to council and staff. We would request that during the detailed planning stage of the project, that consideration be given to how additional green space might be achieved. As an example, by examining the design of the road, which currently takes up about 0.45 acres or 7% of the total site, and of the seniors-oriented housing area, which is shown, I think, as about 0.9 hectares or 14% of the site. So my request really is that that should be taken into consideration during the detailed planning. If we can squeeze a few more green square meters out, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laughlin. Are there questions? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Next, we'll hear from Gail Charrington, I think. Ms. Charrington? Yes, there you are. Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
I picked up a copy of the report this afternoon. I was so busy reading all the comments to do with options 1, 2, and 3, I missed the master plan at the beginning. But I did finally get to the picture. And I'm happy because I've heard Rob say before, houses facing houses, and that's something that I really did want, houses across from me rather than a community center. I have a question about the exit on Allen Street. I was wondering if you have that exit, can you also have the exit that goes around the parking garage where the staff used to enter and exit for the hospital? I'm sure you've got an answer for that, but I was just wondering if that would maybe reduce the traffic so that when we try to back out of our driveways, it might be a little bit easier. And also, I really appreciate what I've seen lately, talking about retaining the berm with the trees and the shrubs. Some of those shrubs I actually contributed to the hospital, so I have a great interest in seeing that berm remain, and the trees and the shrubs. And I know that when that exit comes through, you're going to cut part of that berm, but I'm hoping that maybe you can think another way around that, but please do retain that berm. That means so much to me and my family because we fought for that over 40 years ago. And the last thing I have to say, when I did read the reports this afternoon on options 1, 2, and 3, there was an overwhelming amount of information, and I really congratulate anybody who could try and figure all that out and make everybody happy. It was just totally overwhelming. So I think that's all I have to say. Just have the interest in maintaining trees and shrubs on the berm, and maybe an idea for that public street that exits on Allen Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Charrington. Are there questions for Ms. Charrington? Thank you, ma'am. The next delegation we'll hear from is David Mallon. Mr. Mallon, welcome. And council looks forward to your information. And Ms. Janet Haslett-Thiel. So it's a duet.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Burton, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to delegate to council on this issue, which we regard as very important to our community. My name, by introduction, is David Mallon. My colleague here, Janet Haslett-Thiel. We are both involved in residents' associations in the southeast area, as you know, and together we represent the coalition of resident associations tonight in southeast Oakville. And those resident associations are Trafalgar Chartwell, Joshua Creek, Chartwell Maple Grove. Tim Danter is here, I believe, from Chartwell Maple Grove. Thank you, Tim. Clearview, Rob Brabers is here from Clearview. Thank you, Rob. Oakville Lakeside, Bob, we just heard from. I know that George is indisposed. We are also supported in this delegation by residents' associations from Coronation Park, Kerr Street, West River, and West Harbour resident associations. The relevance, of course, of these fellow associations from southwest Oakville is that they also supported at the previous time, back in 2010, as we supported them as part of being part of Oakville, when they were looking for developments for the Oakville Arena and Trafalgar Park. For those of us that were not with us at the start of the journey, there's some key milestones that have brought us together tonight, together here tonight. I'll get that right in a minute. In 2010, over 1,400 petitioners and 11 resident associations asked Council to support the principle of fair geographic distribution of community centres. Council unanimously endorsed the principle and subsequently approved the rejuvenation of the Oakville Arena to include a community centre and Trafalgar Park to include a senior centre, and the proposed community centre in Ward 3 on the hospital lands back at that time. That was back in 2010. In the meantime, the residents of Wards 2 and 3 have participated in the South Central Public Land Study, 2 Parks and Recreation Master Plan reviews, and 3 different studies on possible development of the hospital lands. We have delegated to Council each time focusing on core principles that included fair geographic distribution of community services, including the provision of community centres for Trafalgar Park and on the hospital lands. Respecting the character of the established adjoining neighbourhood, including an agreed maximum of 29 units per hectare for residential development. And 3, the importance of parkland. Tonight, therefore, marks an auspicious occasion, as all of the Ward 3 resident associations in coalition wish to support and endorse the staff recommendations for the master plan, and we wish to encourage you to vote in favour of staff moving forward to the next phase in the development of the hospital plan. We are looking forward to continued engagement and participation in consultation with the town and staff and our neighbouring resident associations that we understand will begin this fall, covering the following items: more definition and discussion in the area designated for seniors-oriented housing. Just put this up. Thanks. And I'd just like to identify each of these. This, of course, is the area designated as seniors-oriented housing. This is, we understand, just a block of land or an area that's been identified at this point. 2, presentation of options that will repurpose and revitalise the former Oakville Trafalgar High School, which is this area here, of course. 3, design options for the community centre, which is here, and the landscape options for the park and surrounding green space, which we ask retain as much of the existing plantings as possible, including existing trees, shrubbery, and berms. And if I can just identify on this drawing where that is principally, it is along this border of Allen Street. There are substantial trees, shrubs, and berms there. In addition, we ask that the town protect and enhance areas designated as park, which is this area, civic space, which is the area in front of and surrounding the Oakville Trafalgar High School, and lastly but not least, open space, which is the area designated here on the east side of Wyndham Manor. I should point out that although this area is designated as open space, it is in fact currently parkland. There are mature trees there, grass, etc., and it is quite a pleasant area. We do recognise that tonight is not the time when we need to get into the details on these issues, but there will be an opportunity in the fall when these opportunities are put forward by staff for further review and discussion. We would appreciate further discussion on the parking access and exit and possible traffic calming on the new road to ensure safety and minimise community impact. At the appropriate time, again, if we can have participation in discussions around those issues, we would appreciate it. Now, equally, if not more important, we ask you tonight to share our enthusiasm and commitment to joining us by supporting the only community centre in Ward 3 on the hospital land site with all of the proposed amenities put forward by staff for your consideration. The recent town citizen survey reports that of the considerable activities that Oakville directs and supports, parks and recreation is highly valued by residents. The South East Community Centre will provide a needed community hub for our ward and an accessible swimming pool for the South Central area. The addition of the therapy pool will provide a town-wide resource that staff and residents express will make a very positive difference for young children, the physically challenged and seniors. In regards to the double gym, fitness centre and indoor walking track, history tells us that when there is a full array of amenities and services within a community centre, the result is more people participating of all ages and more revenue to support the facility. Dad drops the kids at swimming lessons and gets in a run. Grandma brings her grandson to baseball lessons and uses the therapy pool, or meets friends for yoga or takes advantage of the walking track. Mum does some lengths while her teenager uses the treadmill or elliptical with her friends. Council support of the community centres in your neighbourhoods demonstrates you recognise the important role they have in making Oakville a truly livable community. Some of us will walk, some will bike, and some will drive or take transit, but our neighbourhoods will be better connected by having a community centre on hospital lands. I could say, in passing, an engineer couldn't have written that. Janet wrote that bit. We ask you tonight to direct staff to proceed to the design stage for the community centre with these amenities. In conclusion, we want to express our sincere appreciation for the town staff that have facilitated numerous meetings, beyond number perhaps, but numerous for sure, supporting healthy discussion, ideas and alternatives which have resulted in tonight's recommendations. We would like to thank Council who have supported fair geographic distribution of community services and provided direction to staff to bring forward thoughtful options for consideration. The lively, enthusiastic participation of our community, some of which you have seen before we took up the stand tonight. The participation of our community in open houses and related meetings has repeatedly demonstrated and reinforced the importance of these meetings and public open houses, and the strong interest and commitment by the community to this project. Council support tonight successfully brings us to the dawn of a new future for the hospital lands, where the unique story of our Oakville, our special place, will continue to be written. We look forward to continuing to work together in bringing the new vision to life. And we thank you for your time and attention, and will endeavour to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the information. Are there questions for the delegation? Councillor Elger.
Thank you both for coming and speaking tonight. You do an excellent job every time. One point you have here is more definition and discussion on the area designated for seniors-orientated housing, and that ties right in with Mr. David Dinawal, what he was concerned about. What are you looking for, and what do you want there?
So what we understand will happen is in the fall there'll be a consultation that will bring forward different options and definition of that space. Whether it's independent seniors and just condos that allow people to maybe downsize into something smaller and more manageable, whether it's assisted living, whether it's a combination of, we don't know, and so we understand there'll be a consultation in the fall to give us more of that definition, and we look forward to engaging in it, because there are people who it's nebulous, and getting that definition would be helpful.
Have any idea in your mind how many stories you think would be feasible there, that you would like to see there?
Well, I think the overriding premise is 29 units per hectare, and that's probably all I should comment on.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. And is Todd McClure here? All right, delegations are over, and we're turning to discussion item number 1. As I understand it, we have presentations 1, 2, 3, and who is starting over here? Commissioner, you can be the master of ceremonies for the staff.
Mayor Burton and members of council, I was going to start. A lot of the history, actually, the delegations have already provided, but in 2013, you actually had endorsed in principle a concept for the development of the site, which did include a community center, the park facility, and residential uses, and it also included the retention of the high school site as well as the parking facility. And so since 2013, staff in consultation with the community have been involved in various studies to really understand what are the constraints and opportunities on the site. And so with understanding things like the site contamination and the extent of it, the high school site and its condition, the chimney swifts that sit in the chimney of the high school site, and other matters on the site, we're able to then turn our minds to how you could actually look at designing those concepts that you had given us into a master plan. So tonight we have the 3 reports that set out a master plan for the overall site, a financial report which provides you financial information about the development of the overall site, as well as its reconditioning into an opportunity to develop, that being the demolition components, and a recommended program for the community center. So the approval of these 3 reports would then allow staff, very much in consultation with the community, to go forward and move into the details. So this gives us a concept to then work from, which allows us to get into the community center and detailing the design of the community center and how it fits on the site, so you can actually begin to see what it looks like. It will allow us to move into the official plan and zoning on the residential component, so we can get the details of where the driveways are, what are the setbacks, that kind of detail for the community. And it allows us to deal with models to deliver the seniors assisted housing and what then form would it take on the site. So it's the approval of the concept that allows us to get to the details, all of which would need to be in keeping with the intent of the Livable Oakville official plan. So Mark Simeone, the Director of Planning, is going to start with the first item, which is the master plan, and provide the details on that report.
Your Worship, members of council, thank you. I'm here tonight to tell you a story that inspired us as we were reviewing the comments and public information. It initially was a difficult task in terms of coming to grips with the amount of input we received, but we stood back from it and tried to understand the site. You look back at its history in its early days. I understand that the Lions Club back in 1943 commissioned a report or a petition of sorts to understand whether or not there was a need for a population of about 7,500 people in Oakville and surrounding Trafalgar Township, actually, and surrounding lands back all those many years ago. And so it's a story of a community that came together and seeing a need, working together, that supported an outcome. And so the site itself is an integral part of Oakville's past, and we recognize that as staff. We're dealing with something very, very important here, demonstrated by the commitment to the community who continued to come out through many, many public consultations. The community remains committed to the site's future by virtue of its participation, ensuring the same type of outcome, that this piece of real estate in Oakville remains central to the community it serves. We understand and recognize that there's a rich history and heritage associated with the site, and we believe the option we presented tonight reflects that outcome. We think it provides an opportunity for the community to come together and support civic pride, and we all benefit through this process from an engaged community. So here are some of the parameters we had to consider when we were coming to grips with all the information we received. I think I'll start with the bottom one first. We have to meet the 2020 fall to open the community center. That's the time frame that sort of informs all the work that we're doing. As you've heard tonight, and we're fully aware, we have to ensure compatibility with the character of the neighborhood. We have to understand the 29 units per hectare. We have to look at the built form. We have to look at the public realm. We have to bring that all together as we manage and reconfigure the site. We need to conserve the heritage that exists within the community, a sense of community pride, and also the old high school that resides on the property. We need to maintain and create, maintain the connection of the green connections throughout the site, so north, south, east, and west. We're looking at providing a variety of residential uses to bring new people back into the neighborhood and perhaps some opportunities for those who would like to retire into the neighborhood to be there. And we also need to consider revenue potential to replenish town's reserves for future town-wide initiatives. So what have we learned? Well, I can tell you on every issue there seemed to be a different view. We learned that there's a lot of public opinion, a good opinion about this, but we benefited from that commitment of a community that comes together for things that are important to Oakville residents. So we had many ranges. If you pick an issue, we heard it's black and it's white and everything in between. We even benefited from a feedback from one of the Residents Association in the form of a diagram, among many other submissions. If you took a step back from what we saw, there were certain kind of higher level things that started to emerge. There's the sense of the history of the site where it became a focal point for the community, and so there was a civic precinct that started to emerge in our minds. We thought, can we reflect an outcome that reflects that piece of the input? The importance of green space cannot be underestimated. There seems to be, that's one of the most dominant comments that I think we all saw. This notion of undefined seniors-oriented housing, I acknowledge that we haven't quite figured it out yet. And the ranges, as you've heard this evening, it could be independent people living in smaller units that are easier to manage as they stay in the neighborhood, or it could be other forms of assisted care. We still need to do the work on that. But the notion that there's a seniors piece that should reside in the property was heard in our feedback. And also, there's the residential area. People thought bringing life back into the community, bringing new residents into the community was a good idea, so we see that in our recommendations to you tonight. So again, as we marched through the process, we understood that we needed to change our parameters. So the community center and park serves as a gathering place, as the hospital did for many, many, many years, and a source of civic pride. The residential piece will have to mirror basically the residential neighborhood that exists there now. And the seniors component reflects a unique opportunity in this location to reflect the needs and changing demographics of the neighborhood. So we'll travel back to, I don't know what year this is, the little hospital on the left side of the picture. That's the original piece, opened in 1950, I understand. The bottom of the picture, you can see the old high school as it once was, and I'm imagining those dots in the field are football players. I can't imagine what else. And the space in between is where the parking garage is. You'll notice it's the houses that sit there then sit there today. And again, the picture is meant to show you that it has a long history, that the community has allowed the existing hospital and its attendant facilities to evolve in a successful way and maintain the residential flavor and character of the neighborhood. This is our intention as staff going forward. So let's fly back to 2017. So this is the site as seen from an aerial image. You're all familiar. Shedden's on the bottom, McDonald on the top, Allen on the east, and Reynolds on the west. So in understanding the site, we decided to start looking at things that are fixed. In thinking of the parking garage, we know it's not moving. It's our understanding that the parking garage is still a viable structure. It remains a fixed asset and something that cannot be moved on the site. Same goes for the old high school. And thinking about the property limits and also thinking about the block completely down to Shedden, we started to see the fact that there is a seniors component on the site. It exists at the south end of the site in the form of a private land holding in the form of Wyndham Manor. And so in my earlier remarks, I indicated that we had heard that there was sort of themes and streams that started to evolve and the concepts that were reflected in the input that we sorted through. So this diagram, call it the bubble diagram or concept diagram, kind of reflects that input that we saw at a very high level. Residential being at the top, the civic precinct, which would be the park, the community center, and the associated parking garage, and they need to be close together so that there's accessibility for that community center. And then a very big, undefined, seniors-oriented precinct. That's a concept. Those are not building footprints. Those are just showing you how we started to see the site as it emerged through the input we received. And now we can add some detail. Starting in the middle, we have in blue the community center. So it abuts Reynolds on the west side of the site, maintains access into the parking garage and in close proximity to the community center, so the building remains accessible. The park is situated just north of the building to allow programming, interactions between the inside of the building and outside of the building as allowed during the year round. And then at the bottom, we start to put more detail in there again. Now we've thrown the property boundaries back in. You can see Wyndham Manor is on its own with the seniors-oriented housing opportunity, as yet undefined, is simply shown as a location. It's not attached to the high school, but it's in that area. And we're still have significant opportunities to have dialogue with the community and council on what that would look like. We need to understand partners, private or public. We need to understand built form. We understand density limits. We know that there's concerns about, is it larger, taller buildings, facing smaller buildings, and so on. But again, just trying to show you how it emerges from the concept to the recommendation before you. And then we move to the north end of the site where we had envisioned residential uses. You'll see there's now a road proceeding south from McDonald and then turning east towards Allen. There's a medium density block interior to this recommendation, allowing the yellow, the light yellow, to mirror the built form that's immediately across the street from it. So in other words, the yellow should be looking at single detached dwellings that are there, and the new buildings would match. It's our understanding, our hope, or intention, I should say, to match the frontages that exist across the street. This option, I believe, yields us approximately 16 townhouses. That's in the brown marked medium density, you'll see, and about 19 single detached dwellings. And that comes in at 20.8 units per hectare. What have we added here? I think I'm adding green space. So the green lines are drawn randomly. If you've ever seen how, there's an expression in park planning, put the park in, let's see where the people walk, and that's where you put the pathway. I think likely something like that may occur here. These are just meant to show you that access to the site from a green standpoint will be maintained in all directions as people have come to enjoy the hospital lands over the years. You'll note that there is no through traffic. You're not driving through that site on a public road. You may want to drive through the parking garage, pay to drive through it and come out the other side, but I don't see why anybody would do that. So it's not meant to be a through street. It's simply meant to be the L Street, I'll call it, up to the northeast corner of the site, and a drop-off area around the parking garage to service the community center. When speaking about the seniors-oriented housing, I wanted to point out that we're looking at that as part and parcel with the high school. There are issues with chimney swifts in that building. There's some renovations that must occur, and we need to understand that more fully. And we want to keep the option open to see what that may assist us with in terms of the other lands that would be available, potentially with Wyndham Manor, we don't know, potentially with the region, we don't know, or some undefined private partner or other public partner that may come to the table. And as you've heard tonight, we fully expect that that piece will involve extensive dialogue with the community. And so, speaking of next steps, we are here tonight to get direction from council and with a view to meeting the March, or the fall, I guess, of 2020 opening for the Civic Center, Community Center. We will be, planning staff and consultation with other town staff, will be moving to finalize the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for the residential piece, which is the north end of the site. At the same time, we will undertake an understanding by way of a market analysis of what options, exist for the seniors housing oriented piece. We anticipate that the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments will be finished by the end of this calendar year. So there'll be a great deal of certainty and a lot of work for the community and staff to remain engaged on. And all of that under the parameters of 29 units per hectare, matching the character and height and all of that with the neighborhood around it. I believe that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Are you open to questions?
I am.
Council, do you have questions? Councillor Lischina.
Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Simeoni. So the deadline, or we're looking at the 2020 fall. Would the community center be built at the same time as the homes in the area, so the construction happens all at once, or is it going to be a prolonged construction period especially for the residents?
Through your worship. So it's my understanding that might be a phasing question. So it's, because of the time frame is quite tight, I understand, and I can look to Colleen and Nina over here to provide certainty with respect to this, but there's not a lot of gaps in the scheduling, so it's my understanding the community center will be going first in terms of construction activity. Certainly, well, let's start with the demolition, then we'll move to the community center. There are still things we need to define by way of planning and matters with respect to the residential piece. That, in my view, might follow a short time after that in terms of those outcomes. We're not talking significant time in years here, but reasonably speaking, the community center first, the residential piece and the seniors piece likely to follow shortly thereafter.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions? Councillor Ilger?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I think the only concern I heard this evening was with regard to the senior-orientated housing, where people are looking for a little more definition if possible. And they referred to number of units per hectare. Can you give them any idea of what this might look like? And I'm thinking more of the massing and the height.
Through your worship. I can't really, because it remains undefined in my mind, but I can explain, I can reiterate some of the options that I think exist. We heard potentially that there might be, one gentleman explained he might want to have singles across the street, the gentleman just south of Galt along Allen Street. That could potentially be an outcome that we see in the seniors piece, and he was talking about a transitional piece as you move westerly in the site. So you might see different built forms evolve, moving westerly towards Reynolds, respecting that outcome in the first part. But again, I think part of my answer is the unknown of the market analysis and what potential might exist, but those are all in the mix in terms of that discussion.
Everything we approved tonight doesn't lock anything in which could be detrimental to the residents on the east side of Allen.
There's no zoning in place for some of the issues we've described this evening, so there'd be more reason to come back to council to provide that certainty.
I thank you for that. Thanks.
Councillor Adams?
Thank you. On that same issue, so there's an issue around the frontage piece, and I could imagine a couple of options around how to soften that, including incorporating a lower rise version of seniors housing backing onto a higher density kind of seniors housing. Is that one option that's in your mind among others?
It's always good to start with something in your mind, Councillor, your worship. But yes, that's an option that we would look at. I think the answer will lie in part with what we explore with the community and other partners. The region is a good example of that. They may have an issue or an interest in being a partner, potentially. But coming back to the official plans direction through Livable Oakville, it must respect the character of the neighborhood. So, I mean, the options will be influenced by your own guidelines in your official plan policy, and that's one that I think makes good planning sense.
Okay, and the other option being coming back and splitting that segment or that precinct into two other pieces and going back to a residential piece on the front, followed by a seniors piece at the back?
Through your worship, the residential piece in front could do that. It's certainly the direction of council, but it could also be a seniors piece up front. You heard one of the delegates speak about people who are still independent, but they want to downsize,
yep.
And that might lend itself to that opportunity in a great way.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Simeone, you mentioned about certainty for the community. Would that be similar to the restrictions and controls that were put in place on the former Chisholm and Lynbrook school properties in terms of we took it to lot control?
I'm going to have to ask the commissioner to answer that one, as I'm not familiar with that, Councillor, through you.
Yes, that is exactly the intent, to make sure we create that certainty through the provisions of zoning as well as any kind of other sale agreements we could.
And prevent trips to Committee of Adjustment or OMB or a number of other wonderful things.
That has been the intent of the other properties, and that would continue here.
And it's worked pretty well.
Yes, it has.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, Council, I had an indication from Councillor Giddings that he would like to move the three of these together at the end, but it's certainly your option to move them piece by piece. Councillor Giddings, do you have new thoughts on that?
I'd be happy to move the first one first Mr. Mayor. The first one first, and then go from there, and build on those.
Let me see if I can find a seconder. Oh, look, there's a seconder, Councillor Hutchins. Would the mover like to, and seconder like to speak to their motion?
I would. Mr. Mallon, you talked about the journey when you came out. It certainly has been a journey. I think it was 7 years ago that our community, together with adjacent communities, seriously began discussing the need for fair geographic distribution of community services. And a lot of the faces that were involved then are with us this evening, and they were here from the very start. And you're absolutely right. There were endless meetings and discussions and surveys and polls and an election or two in their meetings with staff and a few consultants. And the process has been ongoing, and there have been differences of opinions that were expressed. Ms. Charrington, you mentioned that, further to your comments, you are correct. It is pretty difficult at times to keep everybody happy. And the result is, I think, that our community is stronger as a result of our residents' input and the Residents Association leadership and tenacity in requesting input and listening to their residents. The focus from day one has been what's best for Oakville and our community, and I ask my colleagues for the unanimous support on behalf of the residents that you represent in a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Hutchins?
Yes, it's been a very long haul. I remember going back to 2010, even before that, when fighting for the hospital to remain on site. There was a huge fight with the TCRA, with one section wanting the hospital to stay, and the other section in the TCRA wanting to have two hospitals, keeping the old one there and having the new hospital being smaller. It was all to do with the SARS and having options to, if one hospital was closed, like North York got closed because of the SARS epidemic, there would always be another hospital instead of building a gigantic regional hospital, which may close. So it's been even longer, I guess, for me. 15, 16 years I've been talking about this sort of thing. But yes, it's wonderful to see it all coming together. And I'm very glad there are going to be a recorded vote, because I'm going to be voting for this enthusiastically. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Duddick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Throughout the discussions we've had in the past regarding what to put on the old OTMH site, we've heard from many in our community, including myself, that it would be a shame to lose some form of health care being provided on the old hospital site. And suggestions ranged from a rehabilitation center, medical center, possibly even a satellite emergency center. When we realized that the funding source for those healthcare visions were not going to be realized, we wrapped our heads around what could go on the site. And for me, this is when the true sign of what makes a community kicked in. I can honestly say I've never witnessed such a heartwarming display of neighborly support as I did through the South Central land studies process. Rather than pitting one community or neighborhood against the other, our residents worked collectively with our staff and this council to arrive at a win-win for everyone concerned. And it's funny, in reviewing the report and looking at the various aspects of the development, I truly believe we are in fact coming full circle in approving a plan that will provide health care to the community. This center will foster and promote the health and well-being of not only the immediate neighborhood, but the broader Oakville community as well. I'm pleased to provide my full support of this plan, and I look forward to seeing the plans progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duddick. Are there other speakers? Then the motion's before. Shall I put the vote? To be recorded in favor, please rise to be named. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Chisholm, and Councillor Duddick, and Mayor Burton. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Now, we'll turn back to staff for the synopsis of the second item on the agenda tonight, and that is the financial information. And this report is for receipt. And if you give your attention to Nancy Sully, she'll walk you through the fairly unique aspects of this report.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. The second report on tonight's agenda provides an update on the financial information that was presented in May. It is intended to be a companion report to the other reports on the agenda tonight, and it will provide some updated information on both the capital and operating costs, as well as the funding sources for the project and our capital financing strategy, as well as how we use the land sale revenue in the town to fund our capital requirements. And there were questions asked regarding sponsorship last time, so I will address that a bit. And finally, the impact on future operating budgets. So the cost of the facility has been tweaked just slightly for the additional amenities. We have included the incremental cost of constructing a second story, as we don't know for sure that we'll need that, but there is a possibility that will be required, as well as the IT infrastructure, et cetera. So it brings the revised cost of the site to just under $54 million. And there are sufficient contingencies in this project, so staff feel this is the final estimate for the project. We don't expect to be coming forward with additional requests. So the funding sources for the project, the town reserves or the capital reserve are the primarily funding source for this project. As well, 1/3 of the community center is funded from development charges, and I'll speak a little bit about development charges in a minute and why that is. And 1/3 of some of the additional amenities would likely be funded from development charges as well. And finally, the parks component would be funded through the Parkland Reserve Fund. So this shows the funding sources. $41.4 million of the project, the overall $54 million project, is coming from the capital reserve. Development charges will fund $10.7 million, and then the Parkland Reserve just under $2 million. So our development charges, there's various sources of funding for capital projects. And our growth projects, the primary funding source is typically development charges. Development charges are collected under the Development Charge Act. It's a very prescriptive process we go through to calculate the charge and what is paid on a new unit. The funding comes in for the different components. Typically, the percentage that would be funded from development charges depends on how much of that project need is driven from new residents coming into the town. So in the case of 16 Mile Community Center, 90% of that project was funded from development charges because of all the growth in the north. In the case of this project, 1/3 of it's been identified as development charge funding, and that was included in our background study with the 2012 bylaw. The reason for this is the actual size of the community center is larger than what would be needed specifically for new residents coming into town. A portion of it is because of community desires, demographics, et cetera. As well, the pool component of the community center is replacing an existing facility, so we can't use development charges to fund something that was already there. The report outlines, and I think through the last few capital budgets, I've talked about the fact that our growth is going a bit slower than what was anticipated in the best planning estimates. I know there's a lot of growth in the north, but due to the slowness, it has required us to push some of our projects out. This one has stayed where it is, so the timing for this project remains in the forecast with the timing that we had always envisioned. So the capital reserve is the primary funding source of the community center. In 2014, when this project was included in the budget, we indicated that it was considered to be an interim funding source and that sale from land on the site would be used to assist in replenishing the capital reserve. And the Parkland Reserve component, the park is being funded from the Parkland Reserve. The use of this fund and the collections into the fund are governed by the Planning Act. Contributions come from townwide development applications, and they're used to fund parks according to townwide priorities. So just a little bit about our financing strategy. Two of the primary sources of funding for capital outside of our development charges are the capital reserve and the capital levy. And those are levied through our operating budget. So all of our taxpayers contribute into that through their property taxes. The 2017 budget included just under $45 million in contributions to those two sources. And they're budgeted in our corporate revenue and expense section of our budget, and they're used to fund our capital. So over the 10-year capital forecast that was presented in 2017, a total of $470 million is coming from those funding sources. And the projects that get funded are based on townwide priority, townwide needs. We know that there are other needs that are not included in our 10-year forecast right now. The cultural hub's not in there. Stormwater requirements that are going to come from our master plan are not in there, and there'll be many future needs that will be identified as we move forward. Recognizing this, Council in 2012 passed a resolution that the net proceeds from land sales throughout the community would be used to replenish the capital reserve. So in addition to the money that goes in through the operating budget, land sale net proceeds go in as well. So many of our land purchases are purchased through that. And we fund projects, community enhancement projects, such as the community center in Southeast Oakville will come from that. The revenue from the land sales collected townwide goes in there. It's then used for townwide priorities. In the case of the revenue for the hospital site, the projections right now range from $18 to $23 million. It really depends on what will happen with the senior site, market conditions at the time. But that's a current estimate, and those funds will be used to help replenish the capital reserve. The report identified the net operating cost, or the tax levy impact that the facility would have on the town. Those numbers have been revised slightly. We did do a review of the operating costs and realized that while the revenue assumptions in there are based on a year one opening of the facility, the costs were based on a mature facility. So in the beginning, it takes a while, usually 5 years, I believe, to actually from the opening of a community center to get to the full usage rate. So the revenue is on the lower side right now. It'll grow over time. The expenses were in there were a little bit too high. So we've actually reduced them. It's reduced the expenses by about $200,000. The additional amenities, the net impact has been reduced to about $29,000. And then the parks maintenance cost is in there at $78,000. So this would bring the annual tax levy impact of the site to $2.3 million, or 1.27% on the tax levy. Sponsorship revenue, there is some information in the report on the type of sponsorship revenue that we get for our existing facilities. Staff have estimated that the revenue that could be achieved at this site would be about $20,000 a year. And so my final slide is just showing you what the tax levy impact would be based on the revised operating costs. So the base facility would add about 1.21% once it's fully operational and the transfer to building maintenance reserve is in there. The additional amenities would add 0.02 and the park 0.04, bringing the total impact to 1.27%. And the report recommends that it be received.
Thank you, Ms. Sully. Councillor, are there questions or a motion to receive? Councillor Elgar.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I just note on page 57 of your report, you've got may be eligible for 1/3 DC funding. Like, do we know what is and what isn't yet that we can get DC funding for?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the base project is in the background study at 1/3 funding. We are of the position that the amenities, except for the enhancements to the parking garage and the therapy pool, would be eligible for 1/3 funding of development charges. That's what we will be including in our update to the bylaw. That goes through the whole process. The developers can appeal, but at this point, our position would be that 1/3 of the cost of those would also be funded from development charges.
Can we, any way we can take the words may be eligible out of there then? Out of the report?
Certainly.
Instead of just saying eligible?
The reason it says, well, yeah, we could. The reason it says that maybe is because that will be determined through the update of the development charge bylaw in 2018.
Okay, I don't think we should get rid of the word may and just say development charges is
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Lischina. Thank you, Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Just for clarity, on page 57 of your report, the therapy pool, which has a double asterisk, is saying it's ineligible for DC funding. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The reason we're saying that was identified by the existing community based on demographics in the community, so it's not driven by growth.
Okay. Is it safe to say, and I might have to divert to Colleen or Nina on this one, the therapy pool, is that the 25-meter with the inclusion of a small pool? Is that both in one? You're not on. Yeah.
Thank you. It's two separate tanks. It would be a 25-meter pool, the replacement of the Centennial pool, and then a separate tank, which would be the therapy pool, which would be smaller than that.
So that cost of, rounded out to $2.8 million, that's for both pools?
No, that is just for the addition of the therapeutic pool.
Okay. So where do we find, oh, the therapy pool on your report is that, it says 2.340. So I'm just a little confused on the therapy part.
Sorry.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this was one of the revisions to the estimates. I mentioned that the additional amenities, the cost estimates had increased a bit. The actual revised cost is $2.7 million. That's for the construction of the therapy pool. The actual 25-meter pool is part of the base facility, the $29 million.
Oh, okay. So just for clarity, going back through your worship, Nina, what do we, is it defined as a therapy pool? Is this a conversation pool, or is it, there lessons going to be in this, or I'm not clear on that one.
The therapy pool is roughly about 4,500 square feet, and that includes both the tank and all the additional amenities related to it. It is a smaller tank. It is a very warm water pool, so it does allow for programming that we currently don't deliver because we don't have the pool available, but it allows for sort of therapeutic kinds of programming, such as that we try to put in some of our other warm water pools, but they're not very conducive to it. So with an aging population, sort of physiotherapy kinds of programming, but it also, because of the warmth of the water, does allow for programming and swimming lessons for younger children, and also activities for families that prefer warm water. So it's a combination of those two things.
Okay, I guess we're getting into a little bit more of the grassroots drilling down to this pool. Is it a square pool or a rectangle pool or a round pool, this therapy warm water pool? Do we have any,
can't
just
predict
conceptual?
what the design is going to be, but in all likelihood, it'll be sort of a rectangular, roughly half the size of a typical 25-meter pool.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just building on what Councillor Chisholm was talking about, and this might be a bit before your time here at the town, I seem to recall that we used to use, because I used it for my daughter when she was 2, Oakland's Regional Center, I think at one point, we had parks and rec programming through there, and that was the only opportunity for warm water for small children, from what I recall. So this is the sort of thing that okay, thank you.
Maybe, Ms. Duvall, maybe it would be helpful if you could specify how warm you're talking for this small pool. Because, you know, we did have quite a discussion about pool water temperature as between swimmers and let me call it family swims. And as I understand it, this is hotter still. Could you clarify that?
Yes, that is correct, Your Worship. We would be looking at about 92 degrees.
When I had a pool, that was the temperature that my wife and daughters wanted it kept at. It was warfare. All right. Any more questions or a motion to receive? Councillor Chisholm moves receipt. Councillor Hutchins is seconding. Am I right? All those in favor? It's received. Congratulations, everyone. Now, I guess this is the main event. This really boils down to just the authorization to get going on the the community center so that we meet the timeframe of the fall of 2020. If you give your attention to Mr. Brennan, he will summarize the situation, and we'll be making some choices here. Mr. Brennan.
It's yours. Mine's not up here.
We can ask for technical assistance if you want it.
Did you have it on the podium?
It's, I put it on podium.
Okay, so you'll have to go into
Up is right behind you.
I put this on podium this afternoon. I didn't, I just sent it through the T drive. The podium account? Yes. It was under the T drive. Do you know where it is in here? It's, no, wait a minute. It's not there. Can I go to my T drive? What's your username? M. Brennan. Yep. I'm not sure if that'll work. Okay, can you do that for me? Go to P drive.
Like showing your password to a whole room.
Should be there. Just to my P drive. Just to P. And go down. Down to settings, please.
I feel like we should all applaud.
My apologies. I did send that to podium user this afternoon, but obviously it didn't get there.
You certainly showed that you have a lot of files. Anyway, we're ready to go now. Thank you.
I thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. This will be a relatively short presentation, as most of this, or almost all of this information was presented to Council back on June the 2nd. From a background perspective, we've all heard this evening that the South Central Public Land Study recommended that the former hospital site would have a community center and parkland and residential development. And so following on that, the Southeast Oakville Community Center base program is now in the budget for $30 million, and the community center would be between 40 and 45,000 square feet. Staff recommend the following amenities: a 25-meter pool we've heard about that will replace Centennial Pool, gymnasium, active living space, a multi-purpose space, and community rooms. We have heard through almost everyone's presentation and comments that residents were certainly provided with many opportunities for input to this process. As staff, we started with the stakeholder groups, met with many of the residents' associations on more than one occasion. There were also a number of public meetings and very active input on the website and through social media. And as a result, there was a very strong public support for the addition of the following 4 amenities: a fitness center, the expansion of the base program full-size gym to a double gym, the addition of a therapeutic tank in the natatorium, and the addition of a walking track. Now, Council has seen these slides before, and it's been referenced in Nancy's report that the additional space for the fitness center would be approximately 5,000 square feet with an additional cost of $2.55 million. Gymnasium, again, going from a single gym to double gym, would add about 1,000 square feet and $470,000. Therapeutic pool at 4,500 square feet is $2.74 million. And finally, the walking track at about $1.88 million. So those are the amenities that we are asking Council to provide direction on. In terms of next steps, the report that we presented on June the 2nd, so the first recommendation was that the base program of $30 million be approved. The second is that Council provide direction on the inclusion of the additional program enhancements, and the 4 amenities with their costs are associated right there. And this is very timely. We're actually doing some consultation tomorrow, and we'll be selecting the architect and general contractor within the next 2 days. So that's very exciting. And we will literally be starting the development of this design in July of this year, so about a month's time. And certainly, as has been referenced in other presentations, there will be continued public consultation in the fall, both from the design aspects of the community center as well as the park amenities. And that concludes my presentation. Sorry it took so long to get here.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. It was very interesting having both the report and getting the report. Councillor, are there questions? Councillor Lischina.
Mr. Brennan, just a quick question about the walking track. What's the length of it? Or
The walking track is about 350 feet long.
And the walking surface, I'm assuming you're going to be using materials that are not hurting people's feet. They're not going to get shin splints and that type of thing, that they have to use the therapy pool after.
It would be the same, through you, Mr. Burton, it would be the same materials that would be used in our community fitness center. So it's like a Mondo rubberized track.
Other questions? Then I'm going to turn to Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank my council colleagues for steps 1 and 2 this evening, and I ask for everyone's support again for the third in terms of the enhancements as outlined in recommendation number 2. Those items were talked about in the Parks Rec Library Master Plan. We've heard a lot from staff about it, and I ask for everybody's support again in a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Giddings is moving the recommendation number 1 for approval of the base, and he's also moving that Council direct that the 4 listed program enhancements be added. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hutchins. Is there discussion? Ms. Closey.
Mayor Burton, I just wanted to note that the recommendation as shown in the report have been slightly revised to reflect the revised numbers, and that's the one that's shown on the screen.
We'll make it as noted by the clerk. For the public's benefit, against typos and small changes, we have a bylaw that permits the clerk to make corrections. So it'll all come out in the end as we desire. It'll all work. All right, then if you would like to be recorded in support of the motion, please rise to be named. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Chisholm, and Councillor Duddick, and Mayor Burton. I declare the resolution carried unanimously, and I thank you all, and I thank the community for your amazing input. Council, one more matter detains us tonight, and that is we need a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw, as noted by the clerk. Councillor Knoll, and I'll look over here, Councillor Chisholm. All those in favor? And that is carried. That completes our agenda. It's been terrific working with you, and I look forward to the next opportunity. We are now adjourned.